Well, hello there. This is Craig Hane. I'm the author of the book Teaching Math. This is a picture of me on the back of that book. As you may know, you can download a free PDF copy of it at www.triadmathinc.com. And this video is really about me. It's my Vita, as it were. And you can just read this if you're in a hurry. I just download the PDF and read it. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it. To flesh it in, first of all, I was born in Greencastle, Indiana, back at the end of the so-called Great Depression, 1938. And I grew up in the woods on the banks of Deer Creek, 5 miles south of Greencastle. And the very first teacher I had of mathematics was my uncle, Jack Davis, who was a 65-year-old barber at the time. And when I was about 4 years old, 4 and 5 years old, he taught me to count. He taught me that most marvelous thing that we have today, which is the place system, the decimal number system. And by the time I entered a school in the first grade in Putnamville, Indiana, I could count to 100. And it turns out I was the only child in my class that could do that, had been taught that. Certainly not the only one that was capable, but the only one that had actually been taught. And that gave me a leg up. I was actually the youngest member of my first grade class, but because I could count to 100 before any of them, that gave me a great deal of confidence, and really that propelled me for the next several years. I always felt like I was very good at math. I could always keep up with things, and of course back in those years we focused on arithmetic mostly all the way through the 8th grade, frankly. You got to remember when this was. I grew up in the war years. I remember the rationing and the blackouts in World War II, and my parents both worked during that time. My dad worked in a war factory in Indianapolis, and then in 1950 we moved into the big city of Greencastle, population 5,000, but also the home of DePaul University. And I went to Greencastle High School starting then in the 7th grade, and I studied there during that time, and I had an interesting experience. When I was a freshman in high school, I'd done very well up through the 8th grade, which is essentially arithmetic. And when I was a freshman in high school, I had a very bad experience in algebra. I took algebra and I did not enjoy it. And as a matter of fact, if you go to my book, Teaching Math, in the preface, I tell a story. And quite frankly, it's my story of what happened to me and how I didn't do well in algebra. And I got very discouraged about math. In fact, I didn't like math. I thought, well, gee, all these years I've thought I liked math and now I don't like it. And I was ready to basically do something else and forget about math. But my sophomore year, I got very, very lucky. I took a geometry course, and I had a teacher by the name of Madonna O'Hare, Miss O'Hare. And it turned out that she taught geometry at a pace that was just very good for me, and I was able to learn it, and I did very well in geometry. And in fact, my love of mathematics returned, and my confidence in myself returned, because I was one of the best students in my class in geometry in about 1954. And then I had two interesting experiences the next year, my junior year. The first experience was I went back and had the same teacher I'd had for algebra my freshman year. I was taking out Algebra 2 and solid geometry. And guess what? I didn't do very well in those. But now I had a different perspective. I knew that I was good at math. Miss O'Hare had convinced me of that. And so I began to suspect that it wasn't just me, it might have been the way that I was being taught math. And so I wasn't quite as discouraged that time. And also that same year, this would have been about 1954, 55 in that range, I was a junior. I was hired to teach a friend of mine who was captain of the football team. His name was Fred Unsworth, and his mother, Betty Unsworth, hired me as a tutor to teach Freddie geometry. He was taking it 1 year later than his classmates, and he was flunking geometry. And I tutored him in it, and he went up to making B's in geometry. He got pretty good at it. In fact, he kind of liked it, and it was pretty remarkable. Everybody was amazed that all of a sudden Freddie had gone from being a very weak math student to a pretty good math student. And I give his mother credit for recognizing that and hiring me. And in fact, it let me know that I could actually make money, earn a living, tutoring someone in math. She paid me. I think it was 75 cents an hour, which was good money in 1955. And I have included her name and Freddie's name in the people I dedicated this book to. Miss O'Hare, of course, is my first really good teacher. And then this got me started teaching math. Now, I went to Miss O'Hare at the end of my junior year, and I said, I don't know what the problem is, but I really don't like the math I'm studied this year. And I don't know what to do. I like geometry and I don't like algebra. And she recommended that I go to DePaul and sign up as a special student. And so that's why I put on here, I studied mathematics at Greencastle High School and at DePaul in this time period. So my senior year, I went to DePaul and I took a course in what was then called college algebra. And I had a professor, Dr. Clint Gass, who subsequently became the chairman at DePaul. And guess what? All of a sudden, I made an A again in algebra, and I loved it. And I found out that Dr. Gass was able to teach it to me at a pace that I could understand it. And in fact, it made me feel really good about myself. And he became essentially a mentor of mine. Now, I didn't know where to go to college. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college, and so I wasn't sure what to do. I could have gone to DePaul. I thought about it, but I didn't really want to stay in Greencastle. And so Dr. Gass recommended several colleges to me. One of them was Oberlin College over near Cleveland, Ohio, and that's where I went to college, at Oberlin College. And I double majored in math and English. It's a liberal arts college. You may have heard of it. And at Oberlin, I had another mentor by the name of Dr. Robert Stoll. Now, Dr. Stoll was considered the toughest math teacher there. He taught the course really that weeded out students from being math majors, logic and set theory and that sort of thing. And he became a mentor, and I really, really enjoyed math there at Oberlin. And while I was there, they hired me to be what they call a problem station instructor. And so for 3 years, I taught math as a problem station instructor, and it turns out I was reteaching the math that the professors were teaching to these students, and I found out that if I used a Socratic technique and got them going at the right pace and so on, they could learn math, and I became very successful as a classroom teacher in these 3 years at DePaul. And in fact, it made me realize that not only did I enjoy learning math as a student, but that I liked teaching math. And in fact, they paid me to do it. And on top of that, I tutored a few of my fellow students, and I got paid for that too. So I found out I could learn math and teach math and really enjoyed it. And oddly enough, I was an English major, and I was in a seminar in English, and there was a math English teacher there from a local school nearby, Western Reserve High School down in Wakeman, Ohio. And she told me that they needed a math teacher the next year, and would I be interested? She knew I was a math major as well as an English major. And I went down and talked to the principal, Mr. Runyon his name was, and he hired me, and it was a small school, kind of a country school, and I taught all 4 years of math there. I taught freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. I taught algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and a senior honors course. In fact, I even taught chemistry. And it was quite an experience. I loved that teaching year. In fact, that was probably my most enjoyable year of teaching. I just loved the students. I loved teaching. I actually, to be honest about it, I had them leave their textbooks in their lockers, and I taught them math in the order that I thought was appropriate for them and they could understand it, and it turned out to be a very successful year for them and for me, and I just loved it. But I didn't want to become a high school math teacher. I had other aspirations in life, things I wanted to do. I wasn't sure what exactly, but I knew that wasn't going to be all that I wanted to do, even though I really, really enjoyed it. Well, that summer when I went home, I was talking with Dr. Gass, who I'd kept in touch with all those years, and he told me that he was going to go on sabbatical the next year. And would I be interested in teaching at DePaul? Now, mind you, I'm 22 years old at the time, and I'm just out of college. And all of a sudden, I've been offered to teach at DePaul. Dr. Gass knew that I had been a pretty good math major at Oberlin, and I knew a lot of math. And so I did. The second semester, in fact, I taught at DePaul. And then he encouraged me to enroll as a graduate student at Indiana University the first semester to have something to do because I didn't have any other plans, which I did. And I enjoyed being a graduate student. Kind of didn't really know much about grad school at the time. I never really thought about it, but it was fun, and I liked being a student anyway. I loved the college life, and so after I taught at DePaul that second semester, I decided to go back and continue as a grad student, and I did. I went back to IU, and at IU they hired me as a teaching associate, and I taught calculus and differential equations and various other subjects, set theory and logic. I did a lot of teaching during those 4 years that I was a graduate student, and I really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun doing it. I did a lot of other things too, I might add. I played rugby and I rode motorcycles and had a real good time. I've always liked math because you can do math anywhere. I was tutoring athletes when I was at IU. And in fact, one of the star football players liked math so well after I tutored him that he went ahead and got a master's in math. And I played rugby with him after he got done with football, and we used to do math out on the rugby field. Well, in 1966, I got a Ph.D. in math. I don't have a master's. I never bothered with that, but they gave me a Ph.D., and I majored in something called algebraic number theory, and my teacher was Dr. George Waples, so he was another mentor of mine. I have to give Dr. Waples tremendous credit. I never would have probably succeeded as a grad student had it not been for his teaching and his encouragement. And so there I was. I had a Ph.D. in math now in 1966, and what am I going to do? It turned out my father, who I was very close with, was dying of cancer up in Greencastle, and DePaul didn't have any openings. So I decided the closest place I could find that wanted to hire me, and they came after me actually, was Indiana State University in Terre Haute, Indiana, which is really a teacher's college. It used to be Indiana State Teachers College. It's now called Indiana State University. It was still a teacher's college, basically. And they hired me to teach theoretical courses. I taught their graduate courses. I taught topology and modern algebra and linear algebra and geometric algebra, a whole bunch of things. But while I was there, their math department was part of their math ed department. And so I got to have a lot of conversations with a lot of their math ed teachers and saw what they were doing in their math education. And quite frankly, I wasn't very happy with it. I asked them a lot of questions. I made suggestions to them, which were pretty much ignored. And I became pretty disillusioned with math education at the high school level. And I realized why I'd had so much trouble when I was in high school. And it's a long story. I won't elaborate on it too much, but let's just say that I loved the teaching there, but I didn't particularly get along with the math education people. Well, I left there. My dad died in 1968, and I decided I was going to go do other things. I liked the students at Indiana State, but I didn't get along with the faculty. And I was actually going to leave Indiana, but then Rose-Hulman Institute in Terre Haute, Indiana, found out I was leaving, and they asked me to come over and teach their advanced theory courses to their graduate students. And so I went over there, and I taught math there for 4 years, 69 through 73. Herb Bailey was the chairman of the department, and I really enjoyed it. Rose was a good school. These were bright kids. They were engineering students, mostly engineering students. They weren't very interested in math, particularly, other than as a tool for engineering. Now, this is going to be the end of what I'm going to call part one of this, and it's a good breaking point, and then I'll come back in part two and tell you what happened after I left Rose-Hulman and, well, actually when I started at Rose-Hulman and what happened then in the rest of my life, and that'll be the next page of the Vita.